Hollow footfalls echoing through empty corridors. The primal reaction of flesh brushed by an unseen touch. Shadowy figures slipping between the moss-covered boles of ancient trees. Strange calls issuing from not quite human throats, piercing the stillness of the night. Unusual lights and objects streaming across darkened skies. Stolen minutes and a void filled with obscure and disturbing memories. These occurrences and more are called by many whispered names in many countries around a world we believe we know so well. All of these things share a common thread. I'm Charles Romans, and welcome to the pathways leading to the shadows of legend. One day each of us will close our eyes for the final time. Our hearts will slowly cease to beat, and our last breath will whisper through silent lips as we leave this existence behind. Yet is this truly the end? Do we simply cease to be as the last spark races from our brains along cooling neurons to its final destination in oblivion? Or does the part of us that is uniquely our own continue beyond the grave? Is there existence beyond the temporal? And if so, what mysteries might that existence hold? There are those who would have us believe that our lives end with our final tomorrow, that the physical world is both our beginning and ultimate end. There are also those who reject this explanation, instead contending that the physical world is simply one aspect of an existence which may stretch on through eternity. For now, we are left to wonder if the strange apparitions are a product of our feverish minds, or if ghosts do haunt the fringes of the material world. The ultimate truth may lie somewhere between, unknown to us until we each pass beyond that veil. And between our searching eyes and that veil lies a path that leads us to the shadows of legend. Our guests today are the cast of the popular supernatural show Destination Fear. How is everyone this evening?
Doing good. Can't complain. Thanks for having us.
Well, that's good to hear. Now, if you wouldn't mind, for our listeners and your potential viewers, just introduce yourselves and let us know what your part is on the show.
I'm Dakota Layden. I'm one of the explorers on the show, and I'm also one of the editors on the show as well.
He's pretty humble. He's producer, editor, and he's a cast member. But I'm Kelsey. I'm his sister, so I can fix that. I'm also a cast member on the show and best friends with the other two guys.
And who else do we have with us this evening?
I am Alex Schrader, one of Dakota's best friends and Chelsea's best friend, cameraman and explorer, cast of the show. Yeah.
So I'm assuming you're having a good time with this show.
Oh, yeah. It has its moments. Yeah, there's many ups and downs. It's like a roller coaster.
Of course, the operative question, the first question is, what got all of you interested in the paranormal?
Yeah, so we all grew up with each other, and we were all best friends growing up, and did a lot of things that happened that really sparked our interest. But one of the things was we actually grew up in a house that was somewhat haunted, and we actually got our house blessed even, and it was definitely a very serious thing for about a year. We were young kids when this happened. So me and Chelsea, from an early age, we were kind of thrown into the paranormal and just the idea that there might be something else out there. And Alex was our neighbor, and he experienced it too at our house. And from a very early age, we decided that we were into this stuff, that we were fascinated by it, and we even took it even farther, and we started doing little road trips to abandoned creepy buildings in Minnesota where we grew up, and it became a real passion and hobby throughout most of our youth.
For the haunted house, what kind of things did you experience?
We had a lot of stuff happen. I think the creepiest thing was everyone would hear things, everyone would think they see things, but it started with just the kids. But it did get to the point where our mother was downstairs and she did see what looked like a man in the room in the basement, and when she opened the door, the man basically walked right through her, and that was one of the first experiences one of our parents had, and it definitely validated everything else that we were experiencing. And there was a lot, though. Every sibling in our family could tell you several weird, creepy stories.
Yeah, it was weird because we grew up in a home that we built. So it was a home that we built ourselves. Like, it was not there before. And so electrically, like, everything should have been fine with the house. But we had a lot of weird instances where every TV would turn on in the house at one time. We had weird times where a radio that was unplugged somehow was playing. Another was this weird, like, light situations where, like, lights would actually flick on, like the actual flip switch. So it was, like, a whole lot of everything going on that really sparked our interest in this whole paranormal world.
Well, now you had mentioned that you actually had the house blessed. I'm thinking that kind of implies that at some point you felt fearful being in the home.
Yeah, there was a lot of fear. I mean, we were pretty young too, so what I remember of it was I wasn't able to sleep. There were lots of restless nights. And yeah, I mean, it did get that bad. It got to that point where we needed to bring in people, and there was multiple different groups who came in to do blessings of the house. And yeah, we were definitely pretty fearful.
Well, was it eventually successful?
I would say it was successful, but slowly. It didn't just end right away. There was a few more months of happenings and things that we couldn't explain. But nowadays, like today, they still own the house and nothing happens anymore. But the woods that the house is surrounded by, I don't know if they're haunted or not, but they definitely still creep me out.
Have you done any investigations in the woods themselves?
We haven't for the show or anything, but we've all spent a lot of time. We used to actually do kind of like, with Destination Fear, we have a lot of challenges and scare type situations. And that was actually one of the things we would do at this house was do experiments in the woods. One person go walk through the whole woods by themselves. And we have put it to the test, and it is very freaky.
Now, of course, by researching and you're actually filming this, and I'm assuming you were filming it before the television show, what sort of evidence have you captured that you thought was compelling?
I think one of the funny things was, I was very young, but I did have a camera. And me and Tanner, who's also a cast member on Destination Fear and one of our lifelong best friends, he would come over at night and we would set up the camera in a room or an area of the house, and we would let it record all night. And the next day we would spend 6 to 10 hours watching that tape. And there was a couple times where we would actually catch these flashes of light on camera. There was one time where behind the camera, you could hear what sounded like a picture frame, like being thrown. And so when we watched the tape, we went down to the basement to figure out what picture it was. And there was a broken picture frame that said, it was a picture that said, "God bless this house." And that was a really scary moment for us. But this was definitely pre-investigation us, pre-exploration us. And it was, we still somehow, like we were kind of doing it, like we're doing what we're doing today, at least we're setting up cameras and trying to capture it. You weren't sleeping alone. We weren't sleeping alone, though.
So this is what you're doing now is an outgrowth of when you were younger. It's just like a natural progression, you would say.
I would definitely say that, and it took a big turn too in like middle school and high school for us. Once the house kind of settled down and we got over that, and it seemed like it was getting better, we definitely were hungry for the fear. I think you guys can all agree that we definitely took it far. We found every haunted, creepy building we could get into in a couple 100-mile radius, and we, on the weekends, would go explore them.
Yeah, it's like all those things where people do things because it's like adrenaline seeking, and people return to things. That's why people watch scary movies. It's because like the emotion in what you're doing. And I feel like all four of us, that's kind of what drove us, was this fear element and this, like, I don't know, this uncertainty, this adrenaline that just kept drawing us back and kept just progressing into like, how can we make this scarier? And now we're here. And it's kind of gotten out of control.
Yeah, the progression is interesting, I would say, because what drew us to this right away wasn't
capturing evidence or experiencing paranormal necessarily. It was that adrenaline from being scared. And that's what we've tried to keep throughout this entire experience of doing this show is like that adrenaline, that fear. That's what we want. That's what we crave. Yeah.
So now, of course, since we've broached the subject of fear, would each of you care to share your most terrifying experiences while doing this?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I would say for me, this one was the most mind-boggling. We were in a prison in West Virginia, and I started to feel I felt like a frying pan, like a burning hot hand, and hit me in the back. And I was freaking out, panicking, grabbing for my back. And when we looked on my back, there were these weird raised, almost looked like burns or scratches on my back. And I'm not allergic to anything that I know of. There was nothing at all that I could think of that would have done this, and it happened in a flash.
And I'm assuming that it's not possible that any person could have done that without your knowledge or anything like that.
Exactly. There really was nothing I could think of. I wasn't leaning against anything. The only person who was sitting by at the time was Chelsea. Yeah. She was still she was sitting there scratching your back while exploring the place. It didn't make any sense. And to this day, I hope I never, ever have to go through that again. I almost quit. That was a breaking point. We were almost pulled the plug and just said, let's be done with this road trip.
So that was kind of the pinnacle of fear for you then.
For me, yes. I think Chelsea and Alex might have some even creepier stories.
For me, mine happens, each season has its own fears, and each season has something that sticks out to me the most. I would say for this season, we had a situation at one of the locations coming up, and it was a situation where we were about to get separated, and we realized that somebody actually was on the premises, and an actual person was on the property. And it was kind of one of those weird things where people come to these abandoned buildings all the time, but they usually come with their friends and stuff like that. So it was very eerie to know that we believe, we can't prove it, but we believe that we actually saw somebody breaking in the property, and it was absolutely terrifying. And just knowing that we were all going to separate and sleep alone after that, just added a whole nother element to fear. And, that just brings up another point when we're doing what we're doing, sleeping alone at these locations. There's so many different elements of fear. You have the paranormal, you have animals, you have intruders, you have just the safety of these locations. So for me, it kind of is a snowball effect for me. How about you, Alex?
For me, so we were at this place in Ohio called the Fairfield County Infirmary. Dakota wanted us to do solos the entire night, and it was finally my turn to go in. And down the hall, there is one jail cell, this huge 100-pound door on hinges, and it's shut completely. I go upstairs, I'm walking around, exploring everything. I come back down, look down the hallway, and I see it start to open. And that is when I freaked out. I don't know how I even caught the door opening on camera because my heart was pounding out of my chest. And this part didn't make the cut. It looked like I ran completely out and just get out there, but I was actually lost inside that building too. I was running around trying to find the exit, which I couldn't, and finally got outside. But that was by far the scariest experience that I've had doing this show.
Well, now that being said, would you go back into this place to investigate again?
I did, but with everyone else. I would not go back.
Well, as they say, there's strength in numbers.
Exactly.
And there is things out there that's every bit as dangerous or sometimes more dangerous than the paranormal.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what different types of paranormal experiences have you had? Because there's a plethora of experiences, everything from noises to voices and things of that nature. So if you don't care, just highlight some of the experiences you've caught.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think there's definitely different calibers. Like whenever we hear a noise, it's definitely terrifying because we're alone and there shouldn't be a noise. But those ones are easier to write off as maybe the building creaking. It's easier to come up with excuses in your head on why you shouldn't be scared. But we have had a few times where we've heard audible voices, not some faint, distant, echoing voice, an audible voice that sounds like it's within a 20, 30-foot vicinity of us. And those, they call those disembodied voices, and those are the worst, I'd say, for me, just because it really messes with your brain. But I don't know, we've had a lot. We've had physical, you guys have been, we've got photo evidence of, shadow figures quite a few times. Yeah.
The scariest one, I think, was the Sheboygan Asylum in Wisconsin.
Yeah,
the tunnel.
Caught a full picture of it. Looked like just a weird, tall, skinny apparition, shadow figure down a long hallway, a tunnel system. But yeah, I mean, it varies every night. It definitely, there's a lot to look out for, and I think for us, the more we experience it and the more it happens, the scarier it actually gets. Like, it's not getting easier to be comfortable. Like, it's actually getting harder because we're starting to realize how many possibilities there really are and how many things really can happen. That instead of being anxious of what we might encounter, we already have an idea of what we might run into at places like this, but now we're just constantly thinking about that before we even head in.
I think some of the scariest, evidence that we have sometimes is the evidence that we get when we set up the camera and we leave the room and we come back later and we watch it later after the night's over and we realize that something happened. It just makes that whole night way creepier.
True. Yeah. It doesn't. We set up cameras at every location. So whenever we leave a room and we're going to go explore a different room, we'll leave a camera behind, and 99% of the time, nothing gets captured. But that 1% of the time, it really is very jarring because it's not till after the trip that we get to review all this footage, and so it's not till we're back at home that sometimes we realize there were other things happening that we didn't even see.
It's hard to notice everything at once, and then when you're filming, I'm assuming you're kind of in the dark anyway, so it messes with your own personal perceptions.
Yeah.
And on the subject of perception versus film and things like that, what type of equipment do you use to investigate these places?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely, I would say for us compared to a lot of the other groups, we consider ourselves more adventurers and explorers than investigators, but we do bring some equipment. But the stuff that we bring digital recorders, which are just anyone can go buy a digital recorder anywhere, and we use those. We use thermal cameras. We use devices that will beep when electromagnetic energy is around it, which is what humans give off, and which is what spirits, I believe, give off. And the music box we use is a motion sensor. Mo triggers a song. Yep. And REM pod, and Ovilus. Yeah, I mean, it's a big one I think we use a lot. Yeah, we use something called the Ovilus that has like a word database inside of it. And in the paranormal, people believe that spirits are able to manipulate frequencies with everything, and that's how they're able to communicate so often. So with this device, it's believed that they can choose words out of this device and talk. And we have had too many to count experiences that are really hard to explain, where it's really intelligent responses that have everything to do with the room that we're in.
Well, I would think that just hearing a word would be bad enough, but hearing a response to something you said would be, I guess, to you, definitive proof, wouldn't it?
Definitely true.
I always say that my favorite tool is our camera, our eyes, and our ears, because that's what we use most of the night, and just like to go off of our gut feeling a lot.
And we don't usually break out gear right away. Like, we will explore a building with our cameras, our ears, and our eyes, and eventually, once we feel like there is a room that is creepy or we got bad feelings in, then we'll start to bring out gear and try things. But it's more of an experiment than it is an investigation. We hear all these stories. We know of this gear. We know that a lot of people use this gear. Let's go try this out.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know you mentioned capturing a shadow figure, and you've mentioned ghosts, but what different type of entities do you believe you've encountered?
Oh, man. There's a lot. Like, every location we go to, one of us will pick the location and do all the research and surprise the rest of them with the packet. And it's always different. Every location we come across demonic stuff every once in a while. We try to stay away from that as much as we can. Mm-hmm. You come across just angry spirits, residual hauntings, which are something that's almost like stuck in a loop. It's not like an intelligent haunting. It's kind of more of like your noises, hearing a door opening. It might be residual. And then, I mean, we've dealt with even things where people say there's a little girl in a room, but everything that comes out of her mouth is pure evil and disgusting. And it's like, well, what is this really? Are we really dealing with a little girl?
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that makes it so intriguing is the unknowingness of like, what is it actually? You know, you can speculate all day on something, but it's really hard to pinpoint what exactly it is that we're experiencing.
So you would say it wouldn't be a good idea to assume anything that you see is what it seems to be.
Probably the best, and not assume. Yeah, that's when it gets you. Mm-hmm.
But of course, your mind's going to go to the scariest thought that you can think of when you're in there alone.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, of course, because the brain does play the association game. You know, you see a little female, you think, oh, it's a sweet little girl, when it may not actually be that.
Yeah.
But your brain associates.
Yeah.
So how do you go about determining what something really is?
You know, it's different every time. We don't always, you know. Sometimes we leave a location with way more questions than answers.
More times than not, that's what happens.
Yeah, like it's usually we have a good idea of like what it is, if it's good, if it's bad, but a lot of the times we don't get specific answers always. But that's where the gear will come into play sometimes, where we felt off in this room, someone has maybe seen something out of the corner of their eye, and now we'll break out a piece of equipment like the digital recorder to see if we can get a follow-up or can get an answer. And usually through those answers, we're able to at least make a guess on maybe who we're talking to.
Now, do you ever attempt to expel any kind of spirits in these locations that you visit?
We don't have any experience in that, and we would feel more comfortable leaving that up to the experts to come in and do stuff like that. That's not in our realm of expertise, I guess.
Yeah, and like when we go to these locations, that's something I'd rather have the owners do. Like if they actually want this gone, they can call in the right people.
Right, so it's not something you're just going to take upon yourself to do.
Yeah, usually I'm more concerned about me getting out. Mm-hmm. I want to just leave.
Let me ask you, all of you, sort of a generalized question here. Other than, of course, the fear factor that we've talked about, which is its own attraction, what do you think that most people find attractive about the supernatural as a whole?
I think a lot of people want to know what happens with life after death. I think that's a huge attraction into this field. And a lot of people have experiences when they're growing up, just like us when we were younger. And that's just that burning curiosity of what is that? Why is that happening?
I agree. I think a lot of it has to do with trying to have answers to like why you're experiencing what you're experiencing. Just human nature to want to know why things work and why things are the way they are. So if you have an experience that's really hard to explain, you know, that's kind of what happened to us. That's what kind of got us into that paranormal field, is just searching for kind of what the heck are we experiencing.
So what you're saying, basically, it's a need to understand?
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like, too, a lot of people, even if they don't want to admit it publicly, they are fascinated or curious. Like, I feel like a lot of people have a story or know someone who has a story, something they can't explain. And once you have that experience and know someone that has that experience, from that point on, you're kind of stuck. Like you're fascinated, and it's just how far you go with that, I guess.
Okay. Well, if you wouldn't mind, then give me a little bit of background on why you chose to investigate Waverly Hills.
Yeah. So I took the team to Waverly Hills for our first stop of this new road trip. Waverly Hills is one of those places that if you start doing research on haunted places in the U.S., it's usually on the top 5 list every time. We've all heard of it. And it's actually a location I've been saving because I wanted us to kind of grow before we went to Waverly. And so I figured, it's been 2 full seasons now, multiple road trips. I think we're ready to go to one of the possibly scariest, most haunted places in the country. Mm-hmm. And it definitely lived up to its name. That is for sure.
Yeah, you definitely threw us for a loop because we usually start road trips off like Dakota will ease us into these big, bad, notorious locations. But this one, he surprised us all and just threw us right into the pit of fire.
Mm-hmm.
So it didn't disappoint then.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. It's also, it's so crazy. Like when we started off this new episode, kind of a spoiler, but not really because we already posted about it. We actually were in a hot air balloon when we first saw the building, and this 5-story, 150,000 square foot location to start off the road trip. I'm like, oh my gosh, like where is this going? And it set a very good tone for the rest of the road trip.
Well, I would imagine it would have to.
It really wasn't. It never got easier either. Like I started off strong, and I feel like every location I picked and every location that you guys picked just kept getting scarier and more intense, and there was no break. There was no easy stop on this trip.
Nope.
So I know you've just got a little bit of time left. So if you don't care, tell me what your viewers can expect this season. I know you just touched on it a little bit, but kind of encapsulate that for me.
I would say for me, they can expect much more scary, even pit stops this season. Not only are the locations bigger and badder, but the things that we did before going to the haunted locations, the adventures and the pit stops, we really pushed the fear and the adrenaline aspect hard, and it was just nonstop fear.
In addition to that, every single cast member got a little more creative this season with making their location even scarier. I know it sounds impossible, but each one of us gets to at least pick one location on this road trip, and let's just say everybody maxed out on potential this season.
So have you already started planning next season?
Well, we haven't.
And how are you going to go bigger and badder?
Well, I definitely have a plan. If we do get picked up for another season, I have ideas. I think everyone's been since the end of this road trip, everyone's been figuring out ways to how to get back at each other.
Well, thanks a lot for your time. I appreciate you being on. And I guess we can wrap this up now. And you have a wonderful evening. And I hope that all your destinations from this point on are fearful.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Yeah, thank you
for having us.
This is Charles Romans, and on behalf of myself and our guests, thank you for joining us on this walk through the shadows of legend. If you like what you heard, please follow us and visit our website at shadowsoflegend.com and support our Patreon page to help keep the content flowing. And if you would like to be a guest and share your own brush with a stranger paranormal, don't hesitate to email us and include a contact number. The strange and surreal, the normal and the paranormal are all aspects of the world in which we live. As you reflect upon the stories we have shared, keep in mind that the people sharing these stories are actual, real people just like us. Were the stories shared compelling enough to be given credibility, or should they be relegated to the deeper part of the shadows? But when determining this, it might be a good idea to keep an open mind, because when we look around, we might discover that our own world is less brightly lit than we once thought. Until next time, I'll be waiting for you in the shadows of legend.